trying to go back. Well, here we go. So here, Colombia has done a lot of very interesting and important stuff in early childhood development. And it's a little bit unfair that I have one example, but my presentation can't go on for 3 hours, so next time you invite me, I'll talk for 3 hours. But I can only give up one example from Colombia, and it's a little bit unfair to Colombia that I'm giving one example of one thing that clearly did not work out, and they did a lot of other things that didn't work out. But nevertheless, I think this is an important example. So, traditionally, children in Colombia at ages 3 and 4 were in what was called hogares comunitarios de bienestar familiar. An hogar comunitario was, what we have here is a woman from the community. She received a subsidy to improve something in her house, to improve a room in her house, to make sure that she could receive a number of children. She got minimal training, and then the children came to this house. That was sort of the world for a long time. Now, our guess is that what were happening there is not very much early stimulation. The women were not trained. They really didn't know much about child development or how to foster it. But at least this woman had 12, 15 children that she took care of. She knew them, she knew their names, she knew who was ill, she knew who had to be watched over, she knew who was difficult, she cared about them, and there was at least a level of warmth and attachment between these women and the children they were taking care of. One thing the government of Colombia did is they said, no, this is sort of like old time. What we're going to do now is we're going to build these wonderful new creches. In fact, it is one of the creches. They built these massive creches. And these creches cost about $1 million per creche. And they were also staffed with professionals. And each one of these creches took about 250 to 300 children. And then they did a randomized evaluation. Just like the thing in Jamaica where you do an evaluation. And they found that children in these new buildings that had cost about $1 million to build each, and where the recurring costs were much higher because now you have professionals, were worse off than they had been in their own hogares comunitarios. And the reason is because suddenly now you have these professionals, where you have 300 children, nobody knows what child, who is who, nobody's caring about any particular child, there's no attachment between the child and the caregiver. And so this is a case, I think, a very clear example that improving structural quality, I mean, that's a nice center. That's a nice center, right? It looks a lot better than if I had a picture of the hogar comunitario. In fact, the first picture I had at the beginning was a picture from an hogar comunitario. It looks a lot better. But the actual process quality, the relationship between the caregivers and the children was worse in these big centers than it had been before, and as a result, things were worse off for these children. I'm not going to read this, but I just want to emphasize high process quality is about sort of working directly with children, knowing what their needs are, adjusting to what they need, sort of adapting all your interactions, having high quality interactions with children. And that is not something that just happens because you have a PhD in child psychology. It is something, it is a very important concept that really quality at the end is about these interactions between children and caregivers. And unfortunately, in many evaluations, including some evidence from Brazil, process quality tends to be extremely low. So we build these wonderful creches. I'm not singling out Brazil, I'm saying this is a problem in general in the region. That we have high structural quality and not high process quality. Here, this graph is from Colombia. I want to focus on this one instead, which is from Peru, which is the example I gave you before. Often what you have is, on the one hand, the quality of socio-emotional, the quality of interactions in the socio-emotional domain between caregivers and children, and then the level of interaction in terms of cognitive stimulation. And this is from Peru. We have data from a lot of countries which looks very similar. Basically, on the socio-emotional attachment kind of thing, Peru, like many other countries, does okay on everything that has to do with having stimulating interactions between children and caregivers. The average quality tends to be extremely low. And yet we find that even, what I want to emphasize here, I always go back to the wrong one, and then I'm almost done. I'm sorry that I keep doing this. Look at the graph on the right. show you the results. So all the creches have low levels of process quality in this dimension. I'm going to show you just the comparison between those that have extremely low, the ones that are furthest on the left, and those that have just very low, somewhat further to the right. And what we find is even that those small differences actually make a big difference in child development outcomes. So you don't have to have, here you are in Sierra. You could say, I want to have creches like in Switzerland or Norway. We want to have early childhood development like these countries that do it extremely well. That's great. But maybe you're not going to get to be Norway. For one thing, in Norway it's a lot colder. So maybe you're not going to get to be Norway immediately. Maybe you can aspire to be Norway. Many people aspire to be like Norway in terms of their various social programs. But what I am saying is, even if you just move from being way on the left to being a little bit less on the left, it's in terms of process quality, it's going to have a huge effect on these children's development and subsequent outcomes. I promise you I'm almost done. This is from a study we did in Ecuador, and really all I want to show you, I'm not even going to bother with this, all I want to show you is this. Remember the graph that Eduardo showed from Jim Heckman? Jim Heckman's the Nobel Prize in Economics in the year 2000. He's worked a lot on early childhood development, and he has this graph that shows that investments earlier on matter more than investments later on. Now, to a large extent, that graph is almost like a hypothetical graph. There are pieces of evidence around, but it's not as if Jim Heckman has an identical set of kids who receive these high-quality interventions at different stages in their life cycle. Here, in this study in Ecuador, we have exactly that. We have children who had a high-quality teacher compared to children who had a low-quality teacher, again by random assignment, so they're identical other than that. Those that received the high-quality teacher in kindergarten, or first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, you see that the bar on the left is way bigger than every other bar. What that means is that having the better teacher in kindergarten had a much larger effect on these children's later learning than having the better teacher in fourth grade. It was so important for them to have the better teacher in kindergarten because, again, this is still when their brains are a lot more plastic than later on. So, see, I promised you that I would be almost done, and I am almost done. I'm sorry I've taken up more of your time than I was supposed to. I did warn the organizers that this would happen, so you can be mad at me or not, but just wanted to tell you. But in terms of the closing comments, investments in early childhood can have very high returns. It's not just the right thing to do for these children, which it is, it's also something that really improves their lives and makes them much more productive. And these investments are most effective when they focus on children who have the lowest levels of development in the absence of these investments. So, in study after study, we found that high-quality investments targeting very poor children have higher rates of return than these same investments targeted, for example, to middle-class families. Children develop based on interactions. That's the bottom line. For a child to develop well, to get the kind of affection, to get the stimulation, they need interactions. And these are interactions in the family, interactions eventually in child care centers like creches, interactions in school. If we don't get these interactions right, then we're not going to have the levels of development that we would expect. Latin America has made a lot of progress in the last 15 years, but there's a lot left to be done, and I'm sure that's the case for Brazil as well. So the big question is, how can we design, implement scalable, so not for 70 children, but for hundreds of thousands of children, how can we design scalable and cost-effective interventions? And how can we improve quality? The final thing, and this truly is my final slide, I want to say this. If you ask me, what proportion of children in Ceará are chronically malnourished, or in Fortaleza? I'm sure I can look it up somewhere and get the exact number. If you then ask me, what proportion were malnourished 15 years ago? I can get the answer. 14 years ago, 30. I can make a comparison. If you ask me, how many children of high and low socioeconomic status are malnourished? I can give you the answer. If you ask me the same question about other dimensions of development, I cannot give you the answer. And the reason I cannot give you the answer is because most Latin American countries, including Brazil, have never systematically, on a nationwide scale, measured early childhood development. And that is a huge mistake in my view. Brazil is not unusual, so I don't want to single out Brazil. But a number of countries, Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, and Chile, have now taken measures of early childhood development that are representative for the country as a whole and can be disaggregated by state. It is very important, in my view, for a country like Brazil to do the same thing in order to see where are the biggest problems and what to do about them. And with that, I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and I'm sorry I had to say all of this in English.
Muito obrigado. Tá mais do que claro, aí ficou claro que os investimentos na primeira infância fazem uma grande diferença. Antes de passar para a primeira dama, Carol, nós vamos exibir, doutor Eduardo, o vídeo que o senhor se referiu lá na sua apresentação agora. Por favor, só. Olá, Carol. A gente vai exibir o vídeo do doutor Eduardo rapidinho, 2 minutos antes, tá bom? Obrigado. Tudo ok para a exibição? Ok. Som, por favor. Som.
Aumentar o volume, por favor.
Não tem som, então? Som? Bom, infelizmente ainda não foi possível. Nós vamos tentar, após a participação da primeira-dama Carol Bezerra,